Alright, guys. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Ripster, where movies and entertainment are our reputation. So, Hatchet was released in 2006, was directed by Adam Greene, and stars Joel David Moore, Tamara Feldman, and Kane Hodder. And the story follows a group of night tourists who get stranded at a swamp, after which their boat sinks, and then soon has to survive against a mongoloid monster named Victor Crowley, who slaughters them one by one. First of all, before I get into this review, I really wanted to do a legit film for Halloween, a legit Halloween release review. So this is the closest I could come up with. Yes, there's been many that I reviewed, but that's the whole reason why I hadn't really been consistent with the years, so I apologize for that. With Halloween coming up, I felt like this was the perfect time to actually review this one. And I know there's been other reviewers out there that's been reviewing horror movies solely for Halloween, but this year has been screwed up for everybody, especially with moviegoers. I appreciate you being patient with me, for those of you who stuck around, and I promise you I will get my act together. I'll be more consistent. But let's talk about Hatchet. This film was so comparable to films like Friday the 13th, The Burning, Sleepaway Camp, mostly those 80s nostalgic type films. And I felt like this movie had a lot of that in there, a lot of energy, a lot of spunk. Which brings me to the positives of Hatchet. It had a lot of 80s nostalgia in it. It was a definite tribute to the 80s slasher films. For those of you who grew up in the 80s or were born in the 80s and then watched them as a kid throughout the 90s like I did, this film really held up its own. You get the best of both worlds in this. And you can feel the very life essence of those films in one movie, in this movie. And what's even more rewarding is the kills. They were awesome. I felt like if the Friday movies hadn't been made when they did and didn't have the MPAA people behind them, which was basically wusses, and now if you look at the Friday the 13th movies, you can pretty much view them as PG-13. That's how harsh they were on, well, pretty much any slasher movie back then. I felt like this really made up for that. Again, the MPAA back then were wusses. I mean, the tiniest thing would set them off and would tell the filmmakers, you can't spit out blood, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh my gosh. What was the point of even making any horror movie back then if you had that much of control over you? It was uncanny. But thankfully, nowadays, like I said, when you look at films like Friday the 13th and The Burning, My Bloody Valentine, you can basically rate them PG-13 because, let's face it, you can show a lot more now. And that's what this film did. I felt like this film pretty much made up for whatever the MPAA's thinking was back then, which was very, very limited. Although, you can't really compare it like that because this movie didn't really have a big theatrical release. So, I'm not really being that fair to films that was made back then. But still, yeah, you kind of have to balance it out. And I felt like that's what this movie did for today's standards. Even though this movie came out like 14 years ago. Again, this movie wasn't that huge. It wasn't playing all around the country like Friday the 13th. It wasn't a huge, huge success. But enough to don 3 more sequels. So that's a big win. But the kills in this film was really awesome. I mean, they were able to get away with so much because they didn't have as much restraint, as much MPAA, hassle. They held nothing back. It just felt like a true, genuine gore fest for horror fans. And let's get into the story. Fantastic. Again, a lot of that 80s nostalgia slasher elements. This group gets stranded in this swamp, which is basically the same as the woods. And you have this mongoloid monster just chasing after you and mowing you down. That's basically it. And slaughtering the characters one by one. I mean, it's basically every slasher movie that you've actually really seen, only with extra gore. Because again, this movie had no restraints. Seriously, how much more nostalgic can you get? The direction was fantastic. Adam Greene did a really good job. I think he could probably be the next Sean Cunningham. Even though he might not be as famous, might not be as recognized or noticed as someone who thought up of a concept like Friday the 13th, which was basically original at that time. Still, I think he could be the next Cunningham. I know that's probably taking it one step too far, but still, I'm sticking by it. Again, he doesn't like to be restrained. He's one of those directors that likes freedom. So when he makes a movie, it's mostly going to be direct to DVD or whatever streaming. It's not going to be released in theaters where you have the chains that binds you, that is the MPAA, that tells you to do this, do that. Nah, he won't have any of that. He likes feeling freedom, but he likes filmmaking so much that he doesn't care if he gets famous or rich. He just likes the experience. And I respect him for that. I really do. I do admit, if I ever did break into Hollywood, I probably wouldn't be like that, so I want to get all the attention I want. I'll just say that right up front. But still, I respect a man like that. I respect a man that doesn't want to be restrained. I respect a man that wants to make his own art, his own form, and what he wants to do. You can't really necessarily do that all the time with somebody watching your back, like the MPAA obviously does. Now, I get why the MPAA is there. They try to protect the youth, but if you go on YouTube nowadays, I mean, there's nothing in the world that stops kids from looking at really nasty stuff on YouTube, so yeah, you got that. The overall look of this film was very spooky. It's very dark toned. It's what you'd expect in a slasher film, surrounding characters out in the middle of the woods with this crazy mongoloid monster after you. The characters was memorable, most notably Joel Moore, who plays Ben, and Tamara Feldman, who plays Mary Beth Dunstan. Basically the two main characters of this. I thought they held up their own as the main characters, the main focus of this film, and I thought their performances was done really well. And I can't go on without mentioning something about the villain. Kane Hodder plays Victor Crowley, of course, the monster. Ever since he dawned at the screen as Jason Voorhees, when he put on that hockey mask in Friday the 13th Part 7, that man, I think, was born to play parts like this. Ever since he donned the hockey mask, he's pretty much been recognizable as that character and now as Victor Crowley. And I think he plays him pretty well, pretty doggone good. He's usually a stuntman first, but then he starts playing all these parts, and no matter what anybody says, stuntman or not, I consider him an actor. A really good one, too. Because the parts he plays them pretty well. Because they're mostly monsters. And I like the fact that in the backstory, Kane Hodder played his own dad. He plays his dad in the Victor Crowley backstory when he's younger. And it shows that whole story behind on how, Hatchet Face, which is what they call him in this film, pretty much got started. And I like that whole concept. And I like seeing Kane Hodder, play something other than a monster, even though he's really good at it. Even though he only showed up for like a few minutes without makeup or anything like that. I like that whole idea where they actually cast him. And it's like that whole concept behind Jason Goes to Hell. He played like a little cameo in that. And then there's like this running joke where, hey, Jason killed himself. Which it wasn't like that, but it's kind of similar. And I like that whole thing. It's kind of like a fourth wall breaker scenario. And the makeup effects of Crowley was really good. John Carl Buechler, who actually directed Part 7 of Friday the 13th, was the head of the makeup effects of this, and I think he did a really good job. He also, John Buechler, played the boat guy that was trying to warn the people, don't go in there, it's Victor Crowley, you're all gonna die. He was like the crazy Ralph from Friday the 13th in this film. He only showed up for like maybe 2 minutes, but yeah. He's another one that we lost, sadly. He's no longer with us, but he was decent. His makeup effects team did a really good job on Victor Crowley and the gore effects. And they did have some comic relief in this film. It got a little tongue-in-cheek here and there. Most notably, Deon Richmond, who played Marcus, the friend to Joel Moore's character. I thought he was hilarious. Every time that man spoke, he was witty, he was quick. Like I say, every time he spoke, I found myself giggling with some laughter following.
Come on, you freak! You look like you've been molested by wolves! What? You afraid I'm gonna whip your ass again, you little bitch? I'll put my foot so far in your ass, you're gonna be pulling shoelaces out your teeth for a week!
Plus, there was some other scenes where these two girls that had come on this tour with this guy who claimed to be like a director to start like a film business or whatever, but he was lying to him. And after they found out that he was lying to him, one of the girls was like, I can't believe this happened to me 3 times. So, yeah, you got little funny quips here and there. Try to ease the tension, and the way they wrote it was actually pretty good. You know, I've seen most horror movies where they just try too much and it just falls flat, but in this, I thought they did pretty well. And you got some cool cameos. Robert Englund and Tony Todd, most notably. So you have Freddy Krueger and Candyman, although they don't meet. Still, that's cool knowing that they're there. This film I really do highly recommend. For any horror buff, this is definitely a movie for Gorefest fans. This is a well-established horror fiesta with plenty of gore, jokes, and surprises. It's Reptastic. So, Hatchet. Have you seen it yet? Did you like the overall 80s nostalgic tone? Did you like the premise? Did it take you back a little? Or have you seen better? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video as usual. Like, subscribe, and comment if you hadn't already. And I'll see you on the next one, whatever it may be. Peace the Rep out.